Well, here we are in another week of Hear Me Roar at our Babylon Zoo, and everyone's a little wound up because today the story is a little crazy. It's a little unusual. It's a little frightening, maybe, even maybe a little wild. Okay, more on that later, but it has to do with my favorite animal at the zoo, the lions. Do you like lions? I do too. And I thought, while we can't play this game that I'm going to introduce next, this would be a fun game for you to play at home. It's called the lion, zebra, mosquito game, okay? So creatures can wreak havoc on one another in the wild, okay? Even the tiniest little animals can cause a big problem, especially for like the king of the jungle, okay? Have you ever been bitten by a mosquito? It's horrible. It's just awful. I bet those mosquitoes can even scare the big lions too. So here's a game, lion, zebra, mosquito, that you can play similar to rock, paper, scissors. For the lion, put your hands up and roar. For a zebra, kick your foot back behind you, careful of objects and people around you, because zebras are known for their strong, powerful hind legs. And for the mosquito, you can put out a little pointer finger like you're drinking up some blood. And the lion beats the zebra beats the mosquito, and the mosquito beats the lion. Okay, kind of goes in a circle. There's a fun game to play. But I wanted to talk real quick about this really cool animal. Okay, and keep this in mind because we're going to talk about it a couple of times today. It's called the pangolin. Okay, they're like giant anteaters who are mostly blind and they have no teeth, and they roam around at night looking for some tasty ants to slurp up from their sticky tongues. But unfortunately, they're also hunted at night as well. So what they do when they're afraid is that they roll up into this ball to defend themselves. And even massive hunters like the lion can't pierce or penetrate their thick skins and their scale, so they're covered and they're protected. And I want you to keep that in mind, covered and protected from fierce creatures. But let's play Would You Rather, okay? I'm gonna give you some Would You Rather questions that you're gonna choose some options, and if it's, the first option, you can flutter like a butterfly, and if it's the second option, you can splash into the otter pool. Remember we talked about otters? So here you go. Would you rather steal wild berries from a grizzly bear or swim in waters with a barracuda? Neither of these options are great. What are you thinking? Butterfly over on this side, or a little splash on this side with the otters? Would you rather try to outrun a rhino or an alligator? Well, that's hard, okay? Would you rather run into a rattlesnake or a wolf in the wilderness? Oh man, these are some tough choices to make, but don't worry, none of our exhibits here at the Babylon Zoo are actually going to try anything dangerous like that. They'd be pretty scary. And I know we talked about this frightening story we're gonna talk about today. It might be a little scary, so let's sing a song and then we're gonna jump right into our Bible story from the book of Daniel.
You're the giver of everything we need. You're the maker of everything we see. You make my heart sing. You make my heart sing. You're the only one who never fails. Even when things change, you never
Now we're back in the book of Daniel to learn more about Daniel and his story. So welcome to the lion exhibit. Have I already mentioned that I love lions? I mean, they're majestic and strong, and I find it fascinating that they hunt in this large group. Sorry, it's called a pride. We learned that previously. And lions are going to play a big part in the story I'm going to tell you today. Maybe you heard we were talking about something wild and a little frightening, maybe a little scary. Okay, so do you remember our friend Daniel who stood up to King Nebuchadnezzar and shared God's wisdom with the king? Yeah, okay. So after that, some things happened, and Nebuchadnezzar no longer was the ruler. The next king came in, King Belshazzar, and he was throwing this banquet, and all of a sudden these fingers appeared and they started writing in the wall, and nobody could decipher the message. So they called forward all these people, all these smart official people, and be like, what's on the wall? No one could figure it out. So they finally brought in Daniel, and Daniel's like, I'll tell you what's going on, and this is what's gonna happen. So God put a message on the wall, and some of the words meant that, this is in chapter 5. Daniel's going to explain what's happening. And it meant that this rule for Belshazzar was coming to a close. His days were going to be numbered. It means that it was going to be weighed, the balances, and his actions did not measure up to good things. And then the last word was divided. Your kingdom was going to be divided up and given to multiple groups of people. So that's the second king that came after Nebuchadnezzar, King Belshazzar. And then that night, he was dead. So the next king came in, King Darius, and that's where our story is going to pick up, okay? So we're reading in chapter 6, and we're going to start with the first 9 verses. Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high official to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way that Daniel was handling his government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection to the rules of his religion. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced." Things never go well when this stuff happens. "Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except for you, your majesty, will be thrown into a den of lions." Okay, I told you, none of this is going to go well. Let's keep reading. "And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked." So King Darius signed the law. Okay, so it talks about first how well Daniel was doing. He was smart and responsible and kind, and he did so well at his job. Remember like our first week here at Hear Me Roar, where we talked about Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego who wouldn't eat the food because it was wrong for them? And how when they stood up and were obedient to their faith and their beliefs, that God blessed them with this wisdom and these awesome abilities to be smart and wise and helpful and to serve really well. Well, Daniel's obviously doing a good job, right? But there were some other guys around Daniel who were very jealous, weren't they? And they wanted to find this way to get rid of Daniel, but that didn't stop Daniel. And he was committed to following God, and he chose the right thing even when it was hard. So let's keep reading verses 10 through 16. "But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and he knelt down at his usual place in his upstairs rooms with his windows open toward Jerusalem. And he prayed 3 times a day, just as he'd always done, giving thanks to his God. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house, and they found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king to remind him about this new law. 'Did you not sign a law for the next 30 days that any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into a den of lions?'" Yeah, right? Tells you it's not going well.
Yes, the king replied. That decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and the Persians that cannot be revoked.
Then they told the king, that man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, see, they're being little tattletales, being sneaky, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day, trying to pretend like they don't know what they're doing. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of some way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. My heart's breaking. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed. So at last, the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into a den of lions. Yeah, I'm scared too. The king said to him, May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. So Daniel was put into the lion's den, and he stayed there all night. Can you imagine what those lions must have thought? Hey, free dinner. I mean, I've seen the lions. Here we have lions at the zoo, and when it's feeding time, they're unstoppable. You can't get between a lion and his dinner. How do you think Daniel felt being trapped with the lions? Okay, let's keep reading our story. We're going to jump down to verse 19. Very early the next morning, the king got up and he hurried out to the lion's den. And when he got there, I'm nervous. What's going to happen? Okay, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you serve so faithfully able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel answered, Long live the king. May my God, send his angel to shut the lion's mouth so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. Okay, I hope you heard that good news. An angel came down and shut the mouths of the lions. I mean, we've seen all kinds of things here in Babylon, but this miracle is really exciting. Because of God rescuing Daniel, King Darius and others in the kingdom came to realize that the God that Daniel was serving is the one who rescues and saves, and he is the one true God. So let's look at Darius after he pulled Daniel out of the lion's den. We're going to verse 26. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble in fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed and his rule will never end. There's more. You ready? He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that we are doing this story today because how awesome is this miracle? I bet Daniel, he had to be a little afraid down there in the lion's den, right? Maybe even when that first law went into effect that they weren't supposed to pray for 30 days to anyone except for the king, right? When he went back to his home and he knelt down to pray, he knew he was defying that law, but he still did it. Do you know why? Because God was with Daniel when things were scary and messy and frightening, and no matter what, wow, God was right there. In fact, it kind of reminds me of our big idea for this week. And it tells us, I am not afraid. God is with me. Do you think you could say that with me? Okay, are you ready? Go. I am not afraid. God is with me. So remember back at the beginning of our video where we talked about that animal, the pangolin? Yeah, right? Okay, remember how it rolls up into a ball when it's nervous and scared? It kind of defends itself. And even the big lions can't penetrate that thick skin? Yeah. So like that animal, we also may encounter some circumstances where we feel in danger or scared. We may even feel like our strength doesn't compare to what's causing us to feel threatened. We're not as big or as strong or as tough or as faithful or as spiritual as others. Yet, just like that animal. Pangolin. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? We're covered. Did you know that part? We may not have that scaly skin. I know I don't. But God is with us. God provides us with everything we need in moments when we feel most at risk. God covers us and he protects us. And because God is with us, we don't have to be afraid. It's pretty awesome, right? In fact, we have some memory verses that we practice every month. And this month it comes from Nahum 1:7. And it helps us to remember that when we're in times of trouble, guess what? God's caring for us too. So let's practice our memory verse with Sunny.
The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knows those who trust in him.
I am so glad you joined me this week. I can't believe we're almost finished in Roar. We've had a great time, and I am loving this series about Daniel that's teaching us, like, I won't give up because God is with me. I'm not alone because God is with me. And because God is with me, I don't have to be afraid. We've got some great big ideas to help us remember during tough times. So will you join me in a word of prayer as we close? Heavenly Father, I thank you for the reminder that you will never leave us or forsake us, that nothing can remove us from the palm of your hand, and that we have the God of angel armies on our side, that we can trust and obey, that we can be still and know that you are there. God, you are great and powerful and wonderful, and thank you for loving us, for sending your son Jesus so that we can have a relationship with you, for paying the debt of our sin with his blood. God, I thank you for this time of worship and praise, for being able to open your word that you've given us and have the words come alive in stories for us, Lord. I thank you for these kids and these families that we can join together no matter where we are and praise your wonderful name. And I ask that you help us to build stronger in our faith, to grow closer to you. I thank you for this facility, for the way that I've seen it reach out to its community, Lord, to be your hands and feet. And I ask that you equip us with time and patience and energy to continue to do that, and with the love that overflows from us into others. In your holy and precious name I pray. Amen. All right, my friends, next week, I was about to say tomorrow, next week is our last week in Hear Me Roar, and I'm really excited. We're going to end with a very cool story about Daniel. So I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.